The morning fog rolled thick over Havenport's Main Street, cloaking the quaint Maine town in a silvery haze. Shopkeepers swept their stoops and early risers clutched coffee cups, but all eyes turned to the ghostly procession emerging from the mist. 5 German shepherds, their black coats gleaming, moved with military precision, muscles rippling in perfect sync. No leashes, no harnesses, just raw, disciplined power. Leading them was Sophie Bennett, a 6-year-old slip of a girl, her brown braid swaying, her red jacket bright against the gray dawn. Her delicate frame seemed impossibly small beside the massive dogs, yet they flanked her protectively, responding to whispers and subtle hand gestures with eerie accuracy. Gasps rippled through the gathering crowd, phones raised to capture the spectacle. "That's not normal," muttered Helen Whitaker, a retired schoolteacher with silver hair, her cardigan buttoned tight, narrowing her eyes from the bakery steps. "No kid controls dogs like that." "Something's wrong." Sophie's tiny sneakers padded softly on the cobblestones, her face serene, oblivious to the stares. Max, the largest shepherd at 90 pounds, took point, his scarred muzzle alert. Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow followed, forming a tight diamond around her. A slight flick of Sophie's wrist sent Bella left, Duke right, reuniting at the corner without a tangle. The crowd murmured, some in awe, others uneasy. Clara Bennett, 70, Sophie's grandmother with white hair and a knitted sweater, watched from the hardware store, her hands trembling. "She's fine, Clara," whispered Henry Bennett, 72, her husband with gray hair, his leather jacket worn, though his pale face betrayed his heart condition. "Those dogs are her world." Clara nodded, but her eyes darted to Helen, whose whispers grew louder. "That child's disturbed." "Mark my words, those beasts are dangerous." Inside the bakery, Officer Ryan Keller, 35, with black hair and a crisp police uniform, sipped coffee, his gaze fixed on Sophie. He'd followed her walks for weeks, ensuring public safety, but her control baffled him. 20 years on the force, and I've never seen canines this tight, he muttered to the barista. Sophie paused at a crosswalk, the dogs forming a protective semicircle, their eyes scanning for threats. A tourist snapped a photo, calling her Havenport's dog whisperer. But Sophie didn't react, her focus on the dogs. Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Keep her quiet, or the dogs die." Her breath caught, her hands shaking as she showed Henry. "Who sent this?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "What do they know?" The Bennetts had raised Sophie since her parents, elite canine trainers, died in a car crash 3 years ago, leaving her with selective mutism and mild autism. The dogs, Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, Shadow, were her only voice, her parents' legacy. Clara and Henry, stretched thin by medical bills and Sophie's therapy, struggled to manage the pack. But Sophie, at 6, had taken charge, mastering her parents' training journals with uncanny skill. Her daily walks, once quiet, now drew crowds, splitting the town between admiration and fear. Helen's campaign against Sophie had gained traction, her concerned citizens group whispering about neglect and danger. "We can't lose her, Henry," Clara said, her voice cracking. "Or the dogs. They're all she has left of them." As Sophie turned onto Harbor Road, Max's ears flicked, his growl low. Sophie's hand twitched, and the dogs tightened their formation, their eyes locked on a black SUV parked in the fog, its engine idling. Helen, still on the bakery steps, pointed, her voice sharp. "See? Those dogs are a menace. She can't control them." Ryan stepped forward, his hand on his radio, but Sophie's whisper calmed Max, the pack resuming their march. The SUV's tires screeched, speeding off, leaving a chill in the air. Clara clutched Henry's arm, her voice trembling. That wasn't random, Henry. They're watching her. Ryan approached the Bennetts, his face grim. Clara, we need to talk. That SUV's been tailing Sophie for days. He lowered his voice, glancing at Sophie, now kneeling to adjust Bella's collar. I found something in Max's old tags, a microchip, military grade, encrypted. It's not from her parents. Clara's heart sank, her voice a whisper. What does it mean? Ryan's jaw tightened. It's tied to something called Project Sentinel. I don't know what, but it's big. The twist landed like a shockwave. Sophie's silent commands and the dog's precision weren't just her parents' training. The microchip hinted at a darker secret tied to a conspiracy that threatened her and the dogs, and Helen's suspicions had unwittingly set a dangerous chain of events in motion. Ryan, she's just a kid, Henry said, his voice breaking. She's been through enough. Luna whined, pressing her muzzle against Sophie's hand, as if sensing the danger. Sophie stood, her eyes distant, leading the pack toward home, unaware of the storm brewing. Clara's tears fell, her voice fierce. We'll protect her, Henry, whatever it takes. The fog thickened, Havenport's quiet streets now a battleground, and Sophie's hidden secret was about to unravel truths that would shake the town to its core. The Maine dawn painted Havenport in soft gold, the town's cobblestone streets and weathered storefronts glowing under a thinning fog. Clara Bennett sat at her worn kitchen table in the family's modest clapboard house, her white hair loose, her knitted sweater frayed, a cold tea mug in her trembling hands. At 70, she carried the weight of raising 6-year-old Sophie, her granddaughter, whose silent walks with 5 German shepherds had captivated and divided the town. Henry Bennett, 72, her husband with gray hair, leaned against the counter, his leather jacket creased, his face pale from his heart condition. The threatening text, "Keep her quiet, or the dogs die," and the military-grade microchip found in Max's tags haunted them. Sophie, her brown braid neat, her red jacket bright, sat on the floor, whispering to Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow, the dogs circling her protectively, their black coats gleaming, their scarred muzzles alert. The kitchen, once a haven, now felt like a trap. She's out there every morning, Henry, Clara said, her voice low, raw. Those dogs are her voice, but that chip, what's it doing on Max? Henry rubbed his chest, his voice hoarse. Her parents trained them for police work, Clara. Not military ops. Someone's hiding something. Sophie's tiny hand flicked and Bella lay down, her brown eyes fixed on her. 3 years ago, Sophie's parents, elite canine trainers, died in a car crash, leaving her with selective mutism and mild autism. The dogs, their legacy, were Sophie's lifeline, but Clara and Henry, stretched thin by medical bills and Sophie's therapy, struggled to manage them. Sophie, at 6, had mastered their training journals, her silent commands eerily precise. A knock rattled the door. Luna's growl rumbled, her hackles up. Clara clutched her mug, her voice a whisper. "Henry, check the window." Henry peered through the curtains, his voice tense. "It's Ryan." Clara opened the door, revealing Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair tousled, his police uniform crisp, a folder in hand. He'd been tailing Sophie's walks, stunned by her control. "Morning," he said, his eyes on Luna, who softened but stayed alert. "I ran that chip's serial number. It's tied to Project Sentinel, a Black Ops lab shut down 5 years ago." Clara's breath caught, her voice trembling. "Black Ops." "Sophie's just a kid, Ryan." Henry's face paled, his voice sharp. "What's a kid's dog doing with a military chip?" Ryan opened the folder, his voice steady. The lab was run by Victor Randall's real estate firm, a front for bioagent tests. Your daughter's canine contracts overlapped with their timeline. Sophie's parents, Mark and Lily, had trained dogs for police across New England, but never mentioned military work. Sophie's hand twitched, and Max nudged her, as if sensing her unease. Clara's eyes welled, her voice breaking. They died in that crash, Ryan. Was it connected? Ryan hesitated, his voice low. I don't know, but that SUV's been circling your house. Someone wants that chip buried. The door creaked open, and Dr. Emily Harper, 40, a child psychologist with brown hair, her long coat practical, stepped in, her face concerned. She'd been helping Sophie communicate, drawn to her bond with the dogs. I got your call, Ryan, she said, kneeling beside Sophie. Hey, Sophie, you okay? Sophie nodded, her eyes distant, her hand signaling Luna to sit. Emily glanced at the folder, her voice urgent. That chip's broadcasting, Ryan. It's how they're tracking her walks. Henry's fist clenched, his voice a growl. Tracking her. She's 6. Clara stood, her voice fierce. They're not touching her, Henry, or the dogs. Max's growl deepened, his nose snapping toward the window, where a black SUV idled in the fog, its headlights dim. Ryan's hand hovered near his holster, his voice low. That's them. Sophie's whisper, barely audible, calmed Max, but her eyes flicked to Clara, a silent plea. Emily's face tightened, her voice tense. They're scared of what Sophie knows, John. Her parents' journals. Did they mention Sentinel? Clara shook her head, her voice a sob. They never said anything. Just training logs, commands. Sophie stood, her small hand reaching for Max's collar, her fingers brushing a hidden leather pouch sewn inside, unnoticed until now. John froze, his heart racing, as he gently opened it, revealing a USB drive and a note. Sentinel lives. Protect Sophie. What the hell? He muttered, his hands shaking. Emily's face paled, her voice low. Mark and Lily knew. They hid this for her. A screech of tires broke the silence. The SUV roared off, vanishing into the fog. Tom's voice trembled, clutching Luna's leash. They're coming for her, John. Clara gripped the USB, her voice a growl. They're scared we found this. That means it's big. Henry stood, his voice steel. Big enough to kill for. We're not letting them near Sophie. The twist landed like a bomb. The USB hinted at a conspiracy tied to Sophie's parents' death, and her silent walks had unwittingly exposed a secret that put her and her dogs in mortal danger. The Maine dusk settled heavily over Havenport, the town's narrow alleys and weathered docks shrouded in a damp gray fog. Clara Bennett sat in the cluttered back room of the sanctuary's old boathouse, her white hair loose, her knitted sweater frayed, a lukewarm coffee gone bitter on a splintered table. At 70, she bore the scars of raising 6-year-old Sophie, whose silent walks with 5 German shepherds had sparked awe and suspicion. Henry Bennett, 72, her husband with gray hair, stood by the window, his leather jacket creased, his face pale from his heart condition, clutching a USB drive labeled Sentinel Lives. Protect Sophie. The threatening texts. Keep her quiet, or the dogs die. And the military-grade microchip found in Max's tags had turned their quiet life into a nightmare. Sophie, her brown braid neat, her red jacket bright, sat cross-legged on the floor, whispering to Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow, the dogs forming a protective circle, their black coats tense, their scarred muzzles alert. The boathouse, a makeshift hideout, thrummed with tension after the SUV's ominous retreat that morning. "Anything on that drive, Henry?" Clara asked, her voice low, raw, her gaze on Sophie, whose silent commands had saved them. Henry's laptop glowed, his voice shaky. It's got files, Project Sentinel, chemical shipments, dated 3 years ago, right before the crash. Kate Sullivan, 38, the sanctuary's veterinarian with brown hair loose, her lab coat rumpled, clutched a chemical analysis, her hands trembling. 3 years? That's when the old Pier lab shut down. Toxic spill rumors. Clara's throat tightened, memories of her daughter's death stinging. Randall's behind this, isn't he? That chip proves it. Luna's whine was soft, her nose nudging Sophie's hand, her loyalty a lifeline after the text. You're dead, Bennett. A sharp knock rattled the door. Max's growl erupted, his hackles up, his body coiled. Clara grabbed her cane, motioning Sophie to stay back, her voice a whisper. Henry, check the window. Henry peered through a crack in the boards, his voice tense. It's Ryan. Clara cracked the door, revealing Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair damp, his police uniform creased, a police report in hand. It's me, he said, his eyes on Max, who softened but stayed alert. Sophie's parents were investigating Sentinel before they died. Their crash wasn't an accident. Clara's pulse spiked, her voice sharp. Not an accident? Someone killed them? Kate's hand covered her mouth, her voice a sob. For this? And now they're after Sophie. Ryan opened the report, his voice steady. The lab was dumping bioagents funded by Victor Randall's real estate empire. Your daughter's canine logs mention a contact, Wraith. Sophie's parents, Mark and Lily, had trained dogs for police, but their journals never hinted at this. Sophie's hand twitched, sending Bella to the door, her eyes distant. Henry's face paled, his voice trembling. Wraith! Who's that? Ryan's jaw tightened. No name, but the chip's data links to Randall's Pier warehouse. Luna's growl deepened, her nose snapping toward the window, where headlights flickered, a black SUV idling in the fog. Clara's hand tightened on her cane, her voice cold. They're back. Ryan's eyes narrowed, his voice fierce. We need Randall's warehouse logs, Clara, now. But Max's bark turned frantic, his body lunging at the door as boots crunched outside, too heavy, too deliberate. Clara shoved a crate aside, her voice urgent. Sophie, get to the loft. Hide. Sophie grabbed Max's collar, her voice a whisper, leading the dogs up the stairs, her red jacket vanishing into the shadows. Henry followed, his voice fierce. I'm with her, Clara. Clara ignored them, her maternal instincts kicking in, motioning Ryan to cover the rear. Go. I've got this. The door burst open, 3 men in dark gear storming in, one wielding a silenced pistol. Bennett, the leader snarled, his voice low. Hand over the drive. No one gets hurt. Max's snarl thundered from the loft, breaking free, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming the pistol, pinning him to the floor. Sophie's whisper, faint but firm, kept the other dogs back, their growls echoing. Clara swung her cane, cracking a second man's arm, her voice a roar. Stay back! The third man lunged, but Ryan tackled him, zip-tying his wrists, his voice fierce. You're done! Max's growl shielded Sophie, who crouched in the loft, her eyes wide. The SUV's engine roared outside, tires screeching as it fled. Tom clung to Luna, her voice sobbing. They'll kill Max, Clara. Clara knelt beside her, her voice steady. Not while we're here, Sophie. Ryan's flashlight swept the leader's gear, his voice urgent. Military comms, trackers, this is cartel level. Clara rifled the man's pocket, finding a burner phone, its screen flashing a text. Randall's orders, get the drive. Clara's blood froze, her voice trembling. Victor Randall. The developer? Henry's tears fell, his voice a sob. He funded our community center. How could he? Max's whine was sharp, his nose pawing the leader's vest, revealing a hidden vial, bioagent labeled with Randall's company logo. Ryan's face paled, his voice raw. They're weaponizing it. Randall's running sentinel. The twist landed like a bomb. Sophie's phone, hidden in her jacket, buzzed. A video loading, a grainy clip of the crash, a German shepherd pulling a child from a burning car, a voice shouting, "Bravo! Save her!" Clara's heart stopped, her voice fierce. "That's Max! Bravo! He saved Sophie!" Kate's tears fell, her voice steel. "I'm with you, Clara." For her. Ryan bagged the vial, his voice grim. "This is a Black Ops cover-up, Clara. They'll kill to keep it quiet." Max's eyes met Clara's, fierce, ready, a vow to protect Sophie. The boathouse was no longer safe. Randall's betrayal had turned it into a trap, and Sophie's hidden secret was their only guide through a deepening conspiracy. The Maine fog draped Havenport in a thick, icy shroud. The abandoned pier warehouse a hulking skeleton of rusted beams and shattered glass under a sky heavy with rain. Clara Bennett crouched behind a stack of rotting pallets, her white hair soaked, her knitted sweater torn from the frantic escape from the boathouse ambush hours ago, where Max's ferocity had saved them from Victor Randall's mercenaries. Her arthritis ached, but her heart pounded with dread for 6-year-old Sophie, hidden in a safe house with her German shepherds. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow pressed close, their black coats slick, their scarred muzzles alert, their brown eyes piercing the mist. Trained by Sophie's late parents, the dog's loyalty had led them here, chasing Randall's bioagent logs tied to Project Sentinel. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair damp, his leather jacket bloodied, knelt nearby, his breath sharp from his heart condition. Dr. Emily Harper, 40, a child psychologist with brown hair, her long coat muddied, clutched a stolen USB drive, her face grim. Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair wet, his police uniform torn, scanned the pier with a flashlight, holding a tip about Randall's chemical caches. The warehouse, a hub for Sentinel's smuggling, loomed, its creaking walls a gateway to truth or a trap. "Loading dock now," Ryan whispered, his voice taut, pointing to a sagging door. "Guards 4, armed. We get those logs, we bury Randall." Clara's hands shook, gripping her cane, her maternal instincts battling fear, but her voice was fierce. "For Sophie, I'm in." Max's lunge at Randall's man, exposing the bioagent vial, fueled her resolve. The crash video, "Bravo, save her," echoing. Henry's voice trembled, clutching the USB. "She's our hero, Clara. She needs us." Emily's hand gripped Clara's, her voice raw. "Sophie's out there, Clara. Don't let them hurt her dogs." Ryan's flashlight caught a guard's shadow, radio buzzing. "They're moving crates, vials, files," he said, his face grim. "We're out of time." Max's growl was low, his hackles up, leading them through the fog, his nose sniffing for threats. Clara nodded, her throat tight, the boathouse's threat. "You're dead, Bennett," ringing in her ears. "Let's move," she said, her voice low. The dock door was ajar, revealing a cavernous interior, pallets, glowing bioagent vials, and a faint hum of machinery. Clara slipped in, Ryan and Emily covering her flanks, Henry and the dogs trailing, the air thick with a chemical stench. Max's bark was sharp, his body tensing at a locked crate. Clara pried it open with her cane, her breath catching, files, a laptop labeled Sentinel, and vials of murky liquid. "This is it," she gasped, grabbing the laptop. But Luna's growl turned feral, her nose pawing a hidden panel. Henry yanked it open, his voice trembling. Photos. The crash site. Max pulling Sophie out. Randall was there. Emily's phone buzzed, her voice panicked. "Another text, Clara." "You're too late, Bennett." Max's hackles rose, his nose snapping toward the dog. Boots echoed, heavy, deliberate. Headlights roared, 3 black SUVs screeching into the yard, Randall's men spilling out, 6, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "The laptop, Bennett, now!" Clara dove behind a crate, shielding Henry. Max charging, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the concrete. Ryan fired his pistol, grazing a second man, his shots precise despite a bleeding arm, but the others advanced, bullets splintering pallets. Henry's voice was a sob clutching the USB. "They'll kill Sophie, Clara!" Emily screamed, her voice raw. "Max, come back!" Clara swung her cane, cracking a third man's knee, her voice fierce. "Stay with me, Henry." Max spun, shielding Emily, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. "Randall's done with you, Bennett." "Wraith wants those files burned." Clara's rage erupted, her voice a roar. "Not today!" She shoved a crate, toppling it onto a guard, Max's snarl protecting Henry, who clung to Bella, whimpering. Ryan's radio crackled. Grayson Gwynn, 30, a journalist at the safe house, her voice urgent. "Clara, Sophie's safe, but Randall's men hit my van. They're after the dog's training logs." Clara's heart stopped, her voice trembling. "They're erasing their past." The twist landed like a sledgehammer. Emily's hand shook, pulling a hidden recorder from the crate, a voice crackling. "If you hear this, Clara, Randall's not alone." Wraith's councilman, Edward Pierce. Clara's blood froze, her voice raw. "Pierce? The town's savior?" Max's bark spiked, his nose at a guard's vest, revealing a burner phone flashing. Pierce's orders. "Eliminate Bennett, Keller." Henry's sob choked, his voice fierce. "They're everywhere, Clara." Ryan tackled a fourth man, his voice grim. "We're pinned." More guards flooded in, 8, tasers and knives surrounding them. Max lunged, disarming a taser, protecting the dogs, while Clara's cane bought seconds, grazing a guard. Emily's voice was desperate, clutching Max's leash. "Don't let them win." The leader aimed at Max, his voice cold. "Your mutts first." Clara threw a crate lid, knocking the rifle free, her rage a grandmother's fire. "You'll never touch him." Max pinned another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Ryan tackled a sixth, but the radio buzzed again. Grace, her voice panicked. "Clara, it's Helen Whitaker. She's at the safe house with a team." Henry's scream was primal, his voice breaking. "Helen? She funded Sophie's therapy. She'd never." But Clara's mind raced. Helen, always at town meetings, trusted by all. Sirens wailed. FBI cruisers storming the yard, floodlights cutting the fog. Ryan cuffed the leader, his voice grim. "We've got them." Clara clung to Max and Henry, Emily's tears falling, her voice fierce. "Find her, Clara. Save Sophie." Ryan grabbed the laptop, his face set. "This name's Pierce's cartel drops." "We're close." But Clara's voice was raw. "Helen's the key. If she's Wraith's mole." Max's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The warehouse was secure, but Pierce's shadow loomed, Sophie's life and her dogs on the line, and her stunning secret was their only hope. The main rain hammered Havenport, the old shipyard a sprawling maze of rusted cranes and rotting docks under a sky churning with thunder. Clara Bennett gripped a flashlight, her white hair drenched, her knitted sweater bloodied from the pier warehouse raid where Max had exposed Councilman Edward Pierce as Wraith, a mastermind in Victor Randall's bioagent smuggling ring. Project Sentinel. Her arthritis flared, but her heart raced with dread for 6-year-old Sophie, hidden in a safe house with her German shepherds. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow moved silently beside her, their black coats slick, their scarred muzzles low, their brown eyes cutting through the fog. Trained by Sophie's late parents, the dog's loyalty had uncovered chemical vials. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair soaked, his leather jacket torn, clutched a stolen laptop, his breath ragged from his heart condition. Dr. Emily Harper, 40, a child psychologist with brown hair, her long coat muddied, held a burner phone, her face grim. Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair wet, his police uniform bloodied, carried a police report, his arm bandaged. The shipyard, a hub for Sentinel shipments, loomed, its shadowed cranes a gateway to answers, or a trap. "West Dock now," Ryan whispered, his voice taut, pointing to a stack of crates. "Guards, 5 armed. We get the shipment logs, we take down Pierce." Clara's hands shook, her flashlight beam unsteady, her maternal instincts battling exhaustion, but her voice was fierce. "Sophie's not losing her dogs." "We end this." Max's lunge at Randall's man, exposing the vial, fueled her resolve. The crash video. "Bravo, save her," echoing. Henry's voice trembled, clutching the laptop. "She's our hero, Clara." "We can't fail her." Emily's hand gripped Clara's, her voice raw. "Sophie's scared, Clara. We have to protect her pack." Ryan's flashlight caught a guard's silhouette, radio buzzing. "They're loading bio-agent crates, files too," he said, his face grim. "We hit fast." Max's growl was low, his hackles up, leading them through the rain, his nose sniffing for threats. Clara nodded, her throat tight, the warehouse's betrayal, Helen Whitaker, implicated in the crash, burning in her mind. "Let's move," she said, her voice low. The dock's edge revealed a cavernous bay, crates, glowing vials, and a faint whimper from a locked shed. Max's bark was sharp, his body tensing at a steel crate marked Sentinel. Clara pried it open with her cane, the sight gut-wrenching. 3 caged raccoons, their fur matted with chemicals, their eyes pleading. "They're alive!" she gasped, rushing forward, Max guarding her, his whine desperate. A kit, scarred, whimpered, reaching out. "We're here," Clara said, cutting the locks, tears burning. Emily's pistol covered the shed, her voice fierce. "Move, critters! We're out!" Henry grabbed a crate's lid, revealing burner phones, bio-agents, and a ledger. "This lists targets. Sophie's name," he said, bagging a phone. But Luna's growl turned rabid, her nose pawing a hidden crate. Clara yanked it open, her breath catching. A tablet streaming live, not just the raccoons, but Sophie in the safe house, a shadow slipping toward her crate. "They're after her!" Clara screamed, her voice breaking, clutching the kit's cage. Henry's sob choked, his voice fierce. "Clara, we have to save her!" Headlights roared outside, 4 black SUVs screeching into the yard. Pierce's men spilling out, 7 rifles and tasers, their leader shouting, "The laptop, Bennett, now!" Clara dove behind a crate, shielding Henry, Max charging, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the mud. Ryan fired, grazing a second man, his shots precise despite his wounded arm. But the others advanced, bullets shredding crates. Emily's voice was a sob, clutching the USB. "They'll kill Sophie, Clara!" Henry screamed, his voice raw. "Max, come back!" Clara tackled a third man, zip-tying him, her arthritis searing, her voice fierce. "Stay with me, Henry." Max spun, shielding Emily, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. "Pierce is done with you, Bennett." "Spectre wants you buried." Clara's rage erupted, her voice a roar. "Not today!" She swung her cane, cracking a guard's wrist, Max's snarl protecting Henry, who clung to Bella, whimpering. Emily's radio crackled. Grace Nguyen, 30, a journalist at the safe house, her voice urgent. Clara, Sophie's okay, but Helen's dosing her. She's got a syringe. Clara's heart stopped, her voice trembling. Helen! She's sedating Sophie? The twist landed like a bomb. Henry's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Spectre's orders. Silence the girl. Not Pierce, but a higher power orchestrating from the shadows. Emily's eyes widened, her voice raw. Another boss. Who's above Pierce? Max's bark spiked, his nose at a crate, pawing frantically. Ryan ripped it open, revealing a hidden drive with emails, not just Pierce, but a code name, Spectre, linked to Senator Margaret Klein. She's the money, Ryan gasped, clutching the drive. Pierce is just the front, Clara's cane snapped up, her voice fierce. We're pinned. More guards flooded in, 9, armed, surrounding them. Max lunged, disarming a taser, protecting the dogs, while Henry's fists bought seconds, grazing a guard. Clara's arthritis burned, but she shielded Emily, her voice desperate. Ryan, get to Sophie! The raccoon kid whimpered, pressing against Henry, its trust mirroring Max's. The leader aimed at Max, his voice cold. Your mutts first. Clara threw a crate lid, knocking the rifle free, her rage a grandmother's fire. You'll never touch him, Max spun, pinning another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Ryan tackled a third, but the radio buzzed again, the woman's voice chilling. Burn it all, Pierce. Bennett's done. Clara's scream was primal, Max's loyalty her anchor. Sirens wailed, FBI cruisers storming the yard, floodlights cutting the rain. Ryan cuffed the leader, his voice grim. You're done. Clara clung to Max and the raccoons, Henry's voice a sob. You saved them, Clara. Ryan's voice crackled through, shaken but firm. We've got Sophie secure, Clara. The feds are moving on Helen. Ryan grabbed the drive, his face set. This name's Klein's cartel ties. We're close. But Clara's tears fell, her voice raw. Sophie's in danger, Henry. They're not done. Max's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a vow to fight. Emily's hand gripped her shoulder, her voice fierce. We'll protect her, Clara. Max is with us. The shipyard was secure, the raccoons safe, but Klein's shadow loomed. Sophie's life at risk. Clara's fight, for Sophie, for justice, was a race against a hidden enemy, and her stunning secret was their only guide. The main storm battered Havenport, the town hall's basement a fortress of cold stone and flickering fluorescence under a sky torn by lightning. Clara Bennett leaned against a rusted filing cabinet, her white hair matted with sweat, her knitted sweater bloodied from the shipyard raid where Max had unmasked Senator Margaret Klein as Spectre, a mastermind in Victor Randall's bioagent smuggling ring, Project Sentinel. Her arthritis flared, but her heart pounded with dread for 6-year-old Sophie, hidden in a safe house, her German shepherds sedated by a traitor. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow lay alert by the door, their black coats tense, their scarred muzzles low, their brown eyes scanning the shadows. Trained by Sophie's late parents, the dogs had saved caged raccoons and exposed Councilman Edward Pierce's cartel ties. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair damp, his leather jacket torn, clutched a stolen ledger, his breath ragged from his heart condition. Dr. Emily Harper, 40, a child psychologist with brown hair, her long coat stained, decoded the ledger on a laptop, her voice trembling. Clara, this lists bio-agent drops. Sophie's on their hit list. The revelation of Helen Whitaker, a retired teacher implicated in the crash that killed Sophie's parents, had turned the basement into a war zone. Keep digging, Emily, Clara said, her voice raw, her gaze on Max, whose instincts had saved them. We need proof Klein's involved. Henry's hand shook, the ledger slipping, his voice breaking. Helen funded Sophie's therapy. How could she do this? Clara's throat tightened, memories of Helen's kindness stinging. She's hiding guilt, Henry. They're using her. Emily's eyes flashed, her voice fierce. Max is Sophie's hero, Clara. He'll find the truth. Max's whine was soft, his nose nudging Clara's hand, his loyalty a lifeline after Helen's betrayal. A thud echoed from the stairwell. Max's growl erupted, his hackles up, his body coiled. Clara grabbed her cane, motioning Emily to the corner, her voice a whisper. "Henry, behind the crates." Henry hesitated, his eyes on Max, then nodded, clutching the ledger. Emily dragged Max, her voice panicked. "Stay, boy." Clara cracked the door, revealing Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair wet, his police uniform bloodied, a chemical report in hand. "It's me," he said, his voice urgent, glancing at Max, who softened but stayed alert. Klein's funding Sentinel through state budgets, Helen's dosing Sophie to keep her quiet. Clara's pulse spiked, her voice sharp. "Dosing her?" "At the safe house?" Ryan nodded, his face grim. "Sedatives in her juice. Enough to silence her." Henry's sob choked, his voice raw. "Sophie." "They're drugging a 6-year-old? Emily's laptop pinged, her voice desperate. "Another email, Clara, from Spectre. Clear the basement, Pierce." "No survivors." Max's growl deepened, his nose snapping toward the vent, where a faint hiss sounded. Gas seeping in. Clara's blood ran cold, her voice fierce. "They're gassing us." "Move!" The basement door splintered, 5 men in tactical gear storming in, gas masks on, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "The laptop, Bennett, now!" Max charged, a black blur, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the concrete. Clara swung her cane, cracking a second man's arm, her shot steady despite her arthritis' scream, but the gas thickened, burning her lungs. Henry swung a wrench, smashing a guard's mask, his voice fierce. "You won't touch Sophie!" Emily coughed, her voice raw. "Max, help!" Clara tackled a third man, zip-tying him, her eyes stinging, her voice desperate. "Emily, get to the vent!" Max spun, shielding Henry, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, mask cracked, laughed, his voice muffled. "Klein's cleaning Havenport, Bennett. Spectre wants you dead." Clara's rage erupted, her voice a roar. "Not today!" She smashed a chair over a guard's head, Max's snarl protecting Emily, who coughed, clutching the laptop. Ryan's radio crackled. Grace and Gwen, 30, a journalist at the safe house, her voice urgent. "Clara, Helen's talking. She named Klein's partner, Deputy Alan Walsh." Clara's heart stopped, her voice trembling. "Walsh? Pierce's ally?" The twist landed like a thunderbolt. The vent hissed louder, and Helen Whitaker, 65, silver hair disheveled, her cardigan torn, burst through a side door, syringe in hand, her face wild. "Clara, give me the drive!" she screamed, lunging at her. Henry's voice broke, tears streaming. "Helen, you're drugging Sophie, our Sophie." Max's bark spiked, his body leaping at Helen, pinning her arm, the syringe clattering. Emily's sob choked, her voice fierce. "You killed her parents, Helen!" Clara tackled a fourth guard, her vision blurring, her voice raw. "Why, Helen?" "Why her?" Helen's eyes darted, her voice desperate. "They threatened my son, Clara. Walsh said they'd kill him." Ryan cuffed her, his voice grim. "You spiked Sophie's juice, didn't you?" Helen's shoulders slumped, her voice a sob. "Just enough to keep her quiet. To save my boy." Max's growl intensified, his nose at Helen's cardigan, pawing a hidden burner phone flashing. Walsh's orders: gas the basement, take laptop. Clara's blood froze, her voice fierce. "Who's Walsh working for, Helen?" "Give me a name." Helen's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. "Klein. She's untouchable." More guards flooded in, 7, armed, gas masks glowing in the haze. Max lunged, disarming a taser, protecting Emily, while Clara's cane bought seconds, grazing a guard. Henry's voice was a sob. "Clara, save Sophie!" The raccoon kit from the shipyard, now freed, pressed against Henry, its trust mirroring Max's. Sirens wailed, FBI cruisers storming the lot, floodlights cutting the rain. Ryan secured Helen, his face set, blood seeping from his arm. "We've got her, but Walsh is free." Clara grabbed the laptop, her voice fierce. "This name's Klein's cartel network." "We're close." But her tears fell, her voice raw. "Sophie's in danger, Henry. We're not done." Max's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The basement was secure, but Walsh's shadow loomed. Sophie's life and her dogs on the line, and her stunning secret was their only guide. The main storm roared over Havenport. The old cannery, a derelict sprawl of rusted vats and splintered piers under a sky fractured by lightning. Clara Bennett crouched behind a stack of moldy crates, her white hair plastered to her forehead, her knitted sweater bloodied from the town hall basement ambush where Max had stopped Helen Whitaker's gas attack. Her arthritis burned, her grazed arm throbbed, but her heart pounded with dread for 6-year-old Sophie, sedated in a safe house, her German shepherds targeted by a traitor. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow pressed against her, their black coats slick, their scarred muzzles low, their brown eyes slicing through the fog. Trained by Sophie's late parents, the dogs had exposed Sheriff Daniel Walsh as a partner to Senator Margaret Klein, codenamed Spectre. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair soaked, his leather jacket torn, clutched a stolen USB drive, his breath ragged from his heart condition. Dr. Emily Harper, 40, a child psychologist with brown hair, her long coat muddied, held a burner phone, her face grim. Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair wet, his police uniform bloodied, gripped his pistol, his arm bandaged. The cannery, a hub for Project Sentinel's bioagent shipments, loomed, its shadowed vats a battleground for truth. "East Pier now," Ryan whispered, his voice taut, pointing to a pile of crates. "Guards, 6 armed. We get the manifest. We nail Klein." Clara's hands trembled, gripping her cane, her maternal instincts afire despite the pain, her voice fierce. "Sophie's not losing her dogs. We end this." Max's lunge at Helen, stopping the syringe, fueled her resolve. The crash video. "Bravo, save her," burning in her mind. Emily's voice shook, stroking Bella. "She'll find it, Clara. She's our hero." Henry's hand gripped Clara's, his voice raw. "Sophie's counting on Max, Clara. We can't let them down." Ryan's flashlight caught a guard's shadow, radio buzzing. "They're loading bioagent crates," he said, his face grim. "We hit hard." Max's growl was low, his hackles up, leading them through the rain, his nose sniffing for threats. Clara nodded, her throat tight, Helen's confession. "Walsh said they'd kill my son," echoing. "Let's move," she said, her voice low. The pier's rusted gate yielded to Ryan's crowbar, revealing a cavernous interior, pallets, glowing vials, and a ledger marked Spectre. "This is it," Clara gasped, grabbing the ledger, but Luna's growl turned feral, her nose pawing a hidden crate. Emily yanked it open, her voice trembling. "Emails. Walsh and Klein, smuggling bioagents to cartels." Sophie's parents were onto them. Henry's phone buzzed, his voice panicked. "Another text, Clara. Bennett's finished. Spectre's orders." Max's hackles rose, his nose snapping toward the pier. Boots echoed, heavy, deliberate. Headlights roared, 4 black SUVs screeching onto the dock, Walsh's men spilling out, 8, rifles raised, their leader shouting, "The ledger, Bennett, now!" Clara dove behind a crate, shielding Henry, Max charging, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a rifle, pinning him to the concrete. Ryan fired, grazing a second man, his shots precise despite his wounded arm. But the others advanced, bullets splintering crates. Emily's voice was a sob, clutching the USB. "They'll get Sophie, Clara!" Henry screamed, his voice raw. "Max, come back!" Clara tackled a third man, zip-tying him, her arthritis searing, her voice fierce. "Stay with me, Henry." Max spun, shielding Emily, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. "Walsh is cleaning Havenport, Bennett. Spectre wants you erased." Clara's rage erupted, her voice a roar. "Not tonight." She swung her cane, cracking a guard's arm, Max's snarl protecting Henry, who clung to Bella, whimpering. Emily's radio crackled. Grace Nguyen, 30, a journalist at the safe house, her voice urgent. "Clara, Sophie's sedated again." Walsh's inside man is Deputy Sarah Klein. Clara's heart stopped, her voice trembling. Sarah? Margaret Klein's sister? The twist landed like a thunderbolt. A figure emerged from the cannery's shadows. A woman, 42, blonde-haired in a deputy's uniform, pistol aimed at Clara. "You're a pest, Bennett," she sneered, her voice venomous. Deputy Sarah Klein, Walsh's inside ally, codenamed Sentinel's Blade. "Sophie's a liability. You're next." Henry's scream was heart-wrenching, his voice breaking. "You worked with Sophie's parents? You drugged her?" Max's snarl was primal, his body leaping at Sarah, distracting her, the shot grazing Emily's leg, blood spraying. Emily's voice was desperate, clutching Max's leash. "Clara, no!" Clara dove, tackling Sarah, her fists swinging, a grandmother's fury unleashed. "You'll never touch her!" Emily's courage, Max's our hero, fueled her, the cane cracking Sarah's wrist, the gun clattering. Henry cuffed her with a zip tie, his voice fierce despite his weakness. "You're done, traitor." But Sarah's laugh was chilling, her eyes wild. "Klein's untouchable, Bennett. You've won nothing." Max's growl spiked, his nose at Sarah's uniform, pawing a hidden microchip, buzzing with a feed. Hundreds of caged dogs in a Russian port. "They're trafficking them," Emily gasped, her voice raw. "Klein's funding it all." More guards flooded in, 10, armed, gas masks glowing in the rain. Max lunged, disarming a taser, protecting the dogs, while Clara's cane bought seconds, grazing a guard. Henry's voice was a sob. "Clara, save Sophie." The raccoon kit from the shipyard pressed against Henry, its trust mirroring Max's. The leader aimed at Max, his voice cold. "Your mutts first." Clara threw a crate lid, knocking the rifle free, her rage a grandmother's fire. "You'll never touch him." Max pinned another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Ryan tackled a sixth, but the radio buzzed again. Grace, her voice panicked. "Clara, Walsh is at the safe house." "He's after Sophie." Henry's scream was raw, his voice fierce. "He's going to hurt her." Clara's vision blurred, her voice desperate. "We're trapped." Sirens roared, FBI cruisers storming the dock, floodlights cutting the storm. Ryan secured Sarah, his face set, blood seeping from his arm. "We've got her, but Walsh is loose." Clara grabbed the microchip, her voice fierce. "This name's Klein's global drops." "We're close." But her tears fell, her voice raw. "Sophie's fading, Henry. We've got to move." Max's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The cannery was secure, but Walsh's shadow loomed, Sophie's life and her dogs on the line, and her stunning secret was their only guide. The main dawn broke cold and harsh. The Havenport safe house, a sturdy cabin of weathered pine and reinforced windows under a sky heavy with clouds. Clara Bennett stood in the cramped living room, her white hair disheveled, her knitted sweater bloodied from the cannery raid where Max had unmasked Deputy Sarah Klein as Sentinel's Blade, a key player in Sheriff Daniel Walsh's bioagent conspiracy, Project Sentinel. Her arthritis ached, her grazed arm throbbed, but her heart raced with fear for 6-year-old Sophie Bennett, sedated in a bedroom hunted for her parents' secrets. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow, the German shepherds trained by Sophie's late parents, pressed against her, their black coats tense, their scarred muzzles low, their brown eyes vigilant. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair damp, his leather jacket torn, clutched Sophie's medical chart, his breath ragged from his heart condition. Dr. Emily Harper, 40, a child psychologist with brown hair, her long coat rumpled, held a stolen USB drive, her eyes red from tears. Officer Ryan Keller, 35, his black hair wet, his police uniform bloodied, gripped his pistol, his arm bandaged. The safe house, now a battleground, pulsed with tension. Walsh was coming for Sophie. "Perimeter's locked," Ryan whispered, his voice taut, nodding to FBI agents outside. "Walsh's men tried to cut the power last night." Clara's hands trembled, clutching her cane, her maternal instincts ablaze despite the pain, her voice fierce. Max stopped Sarah. He'll stop Walsh. Max's lunge at Sarah, exposing her microchip, fueled her resolve. The crash video. "Bravo, save her." Echoing. Henry's voice shook, stroking Max. "Sophie's our hero, Clara. She needs her dogs." Emily's hand gripped Clara's, her voice raw. Walsh was at Sophie's therapy sessions. Clara. How could he betray her? Henry's chart trembled, his voice urgent. "Sophie's got sedatives in her system, trace doses, likely from tampered water. It's affecting her breathing." Clara's pulse spiked, her voice sharp. Inside the safe house, who's got access? Emily's phone buzzed, her voice panicked. "Another text, Clara." "Spectre says end the girl tonight." Max's growl deepened, his nose snapping toward the hallway, where footsteps echoed, too deliberate, too heavy. Clara's blood ran cold, her voice fierce. "They're here!" "Move!" The living room door burst open, 5 men in tactical gear storming in, silenced pistols raised, their leader shouting, "The girl's done, Bennett!" Max charged, a black blur, tackling the leader, his jaws disarming a pistol, pinning him to the floor. Clara swung her cane, cracking a second man's arm, her shots steady despite her arthritis' scream, but the others advanced, bullets shattering furniture. Henry swung a lamp, smashing a guard's knee, his voice fierce. "You won't touch Sophie!" Emily screamed, her voice raw. "Max, help!" Clara tackled a third man, zip-tying him, her arm bleeding, her voice desperate. "Henry, get to Sophie's room!" Max spun, shielding Emily, his bloodied flank heaving, his eyes fierce. The leader, bloodied, laughed, his voice cold. "Walsh is cleaning Havenport, Bennett. Spectre wants Bennett silenced." Clara's rage erupted, her voice a roar. "Not on my watch." She smashed a chair over a guard's head, Max's snarl protecting Henry, who clung to Bella, whimpering. Emily's radio crackled. Grayson Wynn, 30, a journalist at the perimeter, her voice urgent. "Clara, Walsh has hacked the safehouse cameras." "He's watching you." Clara's heart stopped, her voice trembling. "He's running this from inside?" The twist landed like a sledgehammer. A figure stepped from the hallway. A man, 55, gray-haired, in a sheriff's uniform, pistol aimed at Clara. "You're a nuisance, Bennett," he sneered, his voice smooth. "Sheriff Daniel Walsh, Spectre's enforcer. Sophie's a loose end. You're next." Henry's scream was heart-wrenching, his voice breaking. "You killed Mark and Lily, Daniel. Our kids." Max's snarl was primal, his body leaping at Walsh, distracting him, the shot grazing Henry's shoulder, blood spraying. Emily's voice was desperate, clutching Max's leash. "Clara, no!" Clara dove, tackling Walsh, her fists swinging, a grandmother's fury unleashed. "You'll never touch her!" Emily's courage, Max's, our hero, fueled her, her cane cracking Walsh's wrist, the gun clattering. Ryan cuffed him with a zip tie, his voice fierce despite his wound. "You're done, traitor." But Walsh's laugh was chilling, his eyes wild. "Klein's untouchable, Bennett. You've won nothing." Max's growl spiked, his nose at Walsh's uniform, pawing a hidden microchip, buzzing with a feed. Thousands of caged dogs in a Chinese port. "Global trafficking," Emily gasped, her voice raw. Walsh was just the muscle. More guards flooded in, 12 armed, gas masks glowing in the dim light. Max lunged, disarming a taser, protecting Bella while Clara's cane bought seconds, grazing a guard. Henry's voice was a sob, clutching the chart. "Clara, save her!" The raccoon kit from the shipyard pressed against Henry, its trust mirroring Max's. The leader aimed at Max, his voice cold. "Your mutts first." Clara threw a table, knocking the rifle free, her rage a grandmother's fire. "You'll never touch him!" Max pinned another guard, his jaws fierce but controlled. Ryan tackled a sixth, but the radio buzzed again. Grace, her voice panicked. "Clara, it's Randall." "He's alive," leading Walsh's men from the cliffs. Clara's blood froze, her voice raw. "Randall? We exposed him." The CEO's survival was a gut punch, his arrest a ruse to lure them here. Emily's sob choked, her voice fierce. "They tricked us, Clara!" Henry's hand shook, his voice steel. "Randall swore to honor Mark's work." "He's a monster!" Grace's flashlight swept Walsh's gear, revealing a microchip with a new feed. Sophie's room, a nurse slipping a syringe into her water. "Another dose!" Grace screamed, her voice breaking. "They're drugging her now!" Clara's cane snapped up, her voice fierce. "We're pinned." More guards poured in, 15, armed, closing the circle. Max lunged, disarming a knife, protecting Emily, while Ryan's shots bought seconds, grazing a guard. Henry's voice was desperate, clutching Max's leash. "Don't let them win." Walsh's eyes gleamed, his voice cold. "You're too late, Bennett. Sophie's gone." Clara's scream was primal, Max's loyalty her anchor. Sirens roared, FBI cruisers storming the safe house, floodlights cutting the rain. Ryan secured Walsh, his face set, blood seeping from his arm. "We've got him, but Randall's loose." Clara grabbed the burner phone, her voice fierce. "This name's Klein's empire. We're close." But her tears fell, her voice raw. "Sophie's slipping, Henry. We've got to get to her." Max's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a vow to protect. The safe house was secure, but Randall's shadow loomed. Sophie's life fading, and her stunning secret was their only hope. The Maine sun spilled golden warmth over Havenport's town park, where locals, deputies, and news crews gathered for a ceremony celebrating a hard-fought victory over a sinister bioagent conspiracy. Clara Bennett stood on a modest stage, her white hair neatly pinned, a clean cardigan replacing the bloodied knitted sweater from the safe house raid where Max had unmasked Sheriff Daniel Walsh as Phantom's enforcer. Beside her, Sophie Bennett, 6, her brown braids swaying, her red jacket bright, clutched a stuffed puppy, her sneakers scuffed from nights of hiding. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow, the German shepherds trained by Sophie's late parents, sat proudly at her side, their black coats gleaming, their scarred muzzles calm, their brown eyes vigilant. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair combed, his leather jacket crisp, stood nearby, his smile warm but his eyes shadowed by Sophie's fragile recovery. The park buzzed with hope, but Walsh's warning, Klein's untouchable, and Victor Randall's escape cast a lingering shadow. Clara gripped the podium, her voice steady but thick with emotion. Sophie and her dogs didn't just save Havenport. They saved our hearts, she said, eyes sweeping the crowd, Sophie's hand in hers. Their courage broke through lies, and Sophie's silence spoke louder than words. This is your story too, about fighting for justice, no matter the cost. The crowd cheered, cameras flashing, a banner overhead reading, Sophie's Haven. Clara's throat tightened, her duty to Sophie and the dogs now a badge of honor. Sophie's whisper, "Max is our hero," burned bright. Max's whine was soft, his nose nudging Sophie, who smiled, her fear fading. Sophie stepped up, her voice small but clear. "Max and my dog saved me. They love me." The German shepherd's tails wagged, the crowd awing, many wiping tears. Clara knelt, hugging her, her voice cracking. "You're my hero, Sophie. You and Max gave us hope." Sophie hugged Max, whispering, "You're the best dog ever." The air thrummed with unity. Havenport reborn through a girl and her protectors. Henry joined, holding a plaque, his voice warm but trembling. "Sophie's a legend, and her dogs are her strength. Sophie's Haven will rehab canines and kids because of them." He handed Sophie the plaque, the crowd roaring, kids waving signs. "Sophie saves." Sophie, still recovering from sedation, sent a video message from the safe house, her tiny voice clear. "Thank you, Max." Clara's chest swelled, but doubt gnawed. "Henry, we got Walsh, but Randall's out there." "Is Sophie safe?" Max's tail flicked, his eyes alert, sensing her unease. Henry's smile was fierce. "We're close, Clara." "Max started this, and we'll finish it." Grace Nguyen, 30, a journalist, approached, her files heavy, her voice steady. "Feds are raiding ports. China, Russia. Klein's partner, codenamed Viper, is a federal agent tied to the cartel. We've got leads." She nodded at Max, awe shining. "This dog's why Tommy, Ellie, and so many are safe. He's a miracle." The crowd applauded, but Clara's gaze drifted to Sophie, her heart heavy. The text's warning, Viper's shadow, Sophie still a target. A familiar figure stepped forward, Tommy, 11, a shy boy whose dog was saved by Sophie's pack, holding a toy bone. "Max is like my pup," he said, voice soft, tossing the bone. Max caught it, bounding back, the crowd laughing, Tommy's joy infectious. Sophie hugged him, her voice bright. "Max saves everybody." Clara's tears fell, her voice a whisper. "You're changing lives, Sophie." Henry's hand squeezed hers, his voice fierce. "You both are, Clara." The ceremony buzzed, kids petting Max, locals sharing stories, the fund soaring. Grace pulled Clara aside, her voice low. "We found a name, Viper's agent David Holt. He's in Havenport, planning a final shipment." Clara's heart sank, the twist chilling. Holt had attended Sophie's parents' funeral, vowing justice. "He was there," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He used their deaths." Grace's radio crackled. A Feds update. Holt's signal pinged at the old lab, planning a data wipe. "We're moving." Max's growl was faint, his nose twitching toward the crowd's edge. A man in a dark jacket slipping away, unnoticed by most. Clara's blood ran cold, her voice a whisper. "He's one of Holt's, isn't he?" Sophie clung to Max, her small voice fierce. "Max'll find him, Grandma, like he found Helen." The twist deepened. A volunteer, Ellen Pierce, a local nurse, approached, offering Sophie a cookie, her smile too sharp. Max's bark erupted, sharp, his body lunging at Ellen, pinning her to the ground, snarling but controlled. Clara's scream pierced the air, her voice fierce. "Get away from her!" Henry tackled Ellen, his knife drawn, finding a hidden burner phone in her purse, buzzing with a text. Viper's orders, take the girl. The crowd gasped, parents shielding kids, cameras rolling. Ryan cuffed Ellen, his face grim. She's a mole, feeding Holt intel. We're closer. Sophie's tears fell, her voice a sob. Why me, Grandma? Clara hugged her, her voice breaking. Because you're our light, Sophie, and Max is our strength. They can't win. Max's whine was a vow, his eyes locked on Ellen, his instincts unerring. Ryan's voice was fierce, despite his bandaged arm. We've got Holt's trail, Clara. Ellen's phone has his location, a lab facility tonight. Henry's eyes blazed, his voice steady. We end this, Clara, for Sophie. The celebration paused, deputies forming a perimeter, the crowd hushed. Clara's phone buzzed, a video from Sophie, awake, whispering, Grandma, Max kept me safe. Clara's heart leapt, her voice raw. She's awake, Henry. Sophie's fighting. Henry's tears fell, his voice fierce. Then we fight too. For her. Sophie hugged Max, her small voice defiant. You'll save more dogs, won't you, Max? The German shepherd's eyes met hers, fierce, ready, a promise to protect. The ceremony resumed. But Clara's fire, the spark Sophie and Max had lit, was unstoppable, a beacon for the battle ahead. The Maine sunset bathed Havenport's newly opened Sophie's Haven in a warm golden glow, its sprawling fields alive with the joyful barks of therapy dogs and the laughter of children. Clara Bennett stood at the sanctuary's heart, her white hair catching the breeze, a clean cardigan replacing the bloodied knitted sweater from the lab facility raid where Max had exposed Agent David Holt as Viper, the mastermind behind Project Sentinel's bioagent smuggling ring. Beside her, Sophie Bennett, 6, her brown braid gleaming, her red jacket bright, beamed, her sneakers scuffed, clutching a stuffed puppy. Max, Bella, Duke, Luna, and Shadow, the German shepherds trained by Sophie's late parents, sat tall, their black coats proud, their scarred muzzles calm, their brown eyes soft yet vigilant. Henry Bennett, 72, his gray hair combed, his leather jacket crisp, stood nearby, his heart condition eased, pride in his eyes as Sophie giggled, her recovery a miracle. Doctor. Emily Harper, 40, her brown hair loose, her long coat pristine, watched the crowd, her faith restored. The sanctuary pulsed with hope, but Holt's final text, Sentinel lives, girl dies, hinted at a shadow still lurking. Clara took the mic, her voice heartfelt. Sophie and her dogs didn't just save Havenport. They saved our souls, she said, eyes sweeping the crowd, Sophie's hand in hers. Their loyalty broke through betrayal, and Sophie's silence taught us to listen. This is your story, too, about trusting the bonds that heal us. The crowd roared, cameras flashing, a banner overhead reading Sophie's Haven. Clara's throat tightened, her duty to Sophie and the dogs, now a beacon of purpose. Sophie's whisper, Max is our hero, was a spark of light. Max's whine was soft, his nose nudging Sophie, who grinned, her fear gone. Sophie stepped up, her voice clear. Max and my dogs kept me safe. They love us. The German shepherd's tails wagged, the crowd cheering, many wiping tears. Clara knelt, hugging her, her voice cracking. You're my miracle, Sophie. You and Max gave us hope. Sophie hugged Max, whispering, You're the best dog ever. The air hummed with unity, Havenport reborn through a girl and her protectors. Henry joined, holding a medal, his voice warm. Sophie's a legend, and her dogs are her heart. Sophie's Haven will rehab canines and kids because of them. He pinned the medal on Max's collar, the crowd erupting, kids waving signs. Sophie saves. Sophie's tiny voice, stronger now, rang out. Max is my family. Clara's chest swelled, but fear lingered. Emily, we got hold, but that text. Is Sophie safe? Max's tail flicked, his eyes alert, sensing her unease. Emily's smile was fierce. We're close, Clara. Max started this, and we'll keep fighting. Grace Nguyen, 30, a journalist, approached, her badge glinting, her voice steady. Feds are dismantling Sentinel. Arrests in Russia, China, beyond. Holt's files exposed Viper's empire. She nodded at Max, awe shining. This dog's why Ellie, Tommy, and so many are safe. He's changed everything. The crowd applauded, but Clara's gaze drifted to Sophie, her heart heavy. The text's warning, a new shadow, Sophie still vulnerable. A familiar figure approached. Ellie, 10, holding a toy bone, her dog saved by Sophie's pack. Max is like my pup, she said, voice shy, tossing the bone. Max caught it, bounding back, the crowd laughing, Ellie's joy infectious. Sophie hugged her, her voice bubbly. Max saves everybody. Clara's tears fell, her voice a whisper. You're making miracles, Sophie. Henry's hand squeezed hers, his voice fierce. You both are, Clara. The celebration buzzed, kids petting Max, locals sharing stories, the fund soaring. Grace pulled Clara aside, her voice low. We traced the text. A new codename, Phantom, Holt's mentor, still free, tied to a global syndicate. He's vanished, but we're hunting. Clara's heart sank, the twist chilling. Phantom had donated to Sophie's therapy, probing about Sentinel. He planned this, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Sophie was always his target. Grace's radio crackled, a Fed's update. Phantom's signal pinged in Portland, planning a new shipment. We're moving. Max's growl was faint, his nose twitching toward the sanctuary's edge, a woman in a dark scarf slipping away unnoticed by most. Clara's blood ran cold, her voice a whisper. She's one of them, isn't she? Sophie clung to Max, her small voice fierce. Max'll find her, Grandma, like he found Ellen. The twist deepened. A volunteer, Karen Walsh, approached, offering Sophie a juice box, her smile too tight. Max's bark erupted, sharp, his body lunging at Karen, pinning her to the ground, snarling but controlled. Clara's scream pierced the air, her voice fierce. Get away from her! Ryan tackled Karen, his knife drawn, finding a hidden microchip in her purse, buzzing with a text. Phantom's orders. Take the girl. The crowd gasped, parents shielding kids, cameras rolling. Grace cuffed Karen, her face grim. She's a courier, feeding Phantom intel. We're closer. Sophie's tears fell, her voice a sob. Why me, Grandma? Clara hugged her, her voice breaking. Because you're our strength, Sophie, and Max is our light. They can't win. Max's whine was a vow, his eyes locked on Karen, his instincts unerring. Henry's voice was fierce. We've got Phantom's trail, Clara. Karen's chip has his next drop. Portland Port, tomorrow. Emily's eyes blazed, her voice steady. We end this, Clara, for Sophie. Clara took the mic, her voice heartfelt. Sophie's story is about healing, trusting the instincts that guide us, the bonds that save us. It's yours, too. What's your story with a loyal pet? She smiled at Sophie, who tossed a ball, Max leaping, the crowd cheering. Join Sophie's Haven. Help us save canines and kids, one heart at a time. Henry raised a glass, his voice carrying. To Sophie, Clara, and Max, Havenport's soul. The crowd toasted, kids mobbing Max, Clara's laughter mingling with Sophie's. Emily handed her a letter from Ellie, her handwriting shaky. Max is my hero. Thank you, Sophie. Clara's tears fell, clutching it, Max's nose on her hand. You knew, boy, she whispered, kissing his head. The celebration faded, but Clara's fire, the spark Sophie and Max had lit, was eternal, a beacon for the battles ahead. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this, leave a like, and share your thoughts below.